In part 3 of my multi-part Ultrabeat Quicktip's, I'm going to look at Oscillator 2 in Ultrabeat. Oscillator 2 is located in the lower left-hand corner of the synthesizer section of Ultrabeat. Oscillator 2 is very similar to Oscillator 1, which was covered in a separate Quicktip. On the left bottom corner, we have the power switch, and the output sections are identical with the same controls for pitch, volume, and signal flow routing. Oscillator 2 also contains 3 synthesis engines, a phase oscillator, a sample generator, and a model engine. The phase oscillator is nearly the same as found in Oscillator 1. We have the same waveform generator and slope, saturation, and asymmetry controls to shape it into any of the traditional analog synth waves. The one difference between the phase oscillator in Oscillator 1 and Oscillator 2 is that the saturation control is modulatable in Oscillator 2 as compared to the asymmetry control in Oscillator 1. The sample engine allows you to load in an audio file, Ultrabeat sample, or EXS sample as a sound source to be routed through Ultrabeat's filters, envelopes, LFO, and step sequencers. To load a sample, simply click the arrow in the upper left-hand corner of the waveform viewer and select Load Sample. A waveform representation of the sample appears in the viewer. We have controls for reversing the sample, as well as setting up the minimum and maximum velocity values for triggering the sample via the sequencer or MIDI. Many factory Ultrabeat and EXS samples have multiple layers in them for more dynamic performances. The Layers controller gives you the ability to determine which layer is triggered at the minimum and maximum level. Unfortunately, I do not have a velocity-sensitive MIDI controller set up currently, so this option appears disabled. The model engine is a physical model of a string instrument for the creation of percussive sounds. The exciter parameter is the triggering device for the sound creation. Type 1 mimics a mallet-like striking of a string, where Type 2 is a more percussive picked sound. The material pad gives us a stiffness control on the x-axis and an inner loss control on the y-axis. Clicking and dragging the dot in the pad lets us control these parameters in tandem. The inner loss determines the dampening of the string, primarily affecting the high frequencies, for smoothing out the sound on attack and decay. The stiffness control modifies the simulated material type for creating the sound. The higher the stiffness, the more inharmonic tones that are introduced into the sound. Interestingly, 100% stiffness takes on the characteristics of a solid bar, like a marimba or a xylophone.